Western University. Take it away.
Okay. Thanks everybody for coming to our presentation. I'm Rob Dykman. I'm one of the Gen Labs administrators at Western University. And presenting with me is Mr. Ryan Reynard. He's a system administrator in our Windows Server team, also at Western. So this afternoon, we'll be talking about Western's trip to virtual desktops and whether it was worth the trip. So just got a few things we're going to talk about today. I'm going to introduce Western, tell you kind of a little bit of who we are, what our population is. Then we'll talk a little bit about our legacy lab environment, what we came from, then why we made the decision to virtualize our labs, what hardware we purchased for the labs, and then the supporting infrastructure in the back. We'll then talk about how we implemented it, what helped us, and finally we'll hope to answer the question at the end, was it worth the trip? So Western University, formerly known as the University of Western Ontario. We're in Southwest Ontario, actually London, so between Toronto and Windsor. We have 26,000 or so graduate and undergrad students supported by 1,400 faculty and about 2,500 full-time staff. We have 82 campus buildings and we're spread over about 1,200 acres. And they are all supported by a central IT with individual faculties having their own supporting IT as well. So just this is about our legacy lab environment. So we call our labs the Gen Labs, and they are both drop-in and scheduled teaching labs. So Gen Labs is general student use computing labs, or something along those lines. So those are our Gen Labs. We also have some computer labs on campus that are both drop-in and teaching labs and supported by other faculties. So for our Gen Labs, our supporting server infrastructure, we have 3 physical Dell servers, 2 of which are file and application servers that back each other up, that run our Ghost Enterprise Suite, Deep Freeze, and AB Tutor, which allows us to remote into the machines. Our 3rd server is a print server, which is running the ITC Print Manager software, and all 3 servers are Windows Server 2003. So also, as part of our legacy lab environment, we have a remote application delivery system that we're using right now. And it used to be the Sun Secure Global Desktop, but then when Sun was purchased by Oracle, it changed names, changed hands, became Oracle Secure Global Desktop. And we have 3 physical terminal servers that are supporting 22 applications. So just to give you sort of an idea of what type of a lab environment we're working in, this is a map of where our labs are on campus right now. As you can see, they're kind of spread out among our entire campus. The one thing I am going to show you is our data center locations. So we have a data center in this building over here. That's our primary data center. We also have a secondary data center over here in this building. So now, why did we choose to virtualize at the time that we did? Well, first of all, it was the point in time for us to refresh our lab PCs. Our labs run 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, and the machines are on for that entire time. So we refreshed them generally about every 4 years, and we went about 5 with our current systems. As you can imagine, they were all starting to kind of turn over. So it was just the point in time that we had to refresh them. And we wanted to move to kind of a more centralized management model. Instead of having labs all across campus, we wanted to kind of start bringing it back home so that we could manage it on behalf of the users and still allow the individual faculties to have their own instances. We also wanted to have some power and noise reduction. As you can imagine, in the 52-seat lab, the fans, the air conditioning, it's all loud. Plus, it uses a lot of electricity. So we did want to reduce that. We also wanted to improve our user experience. We went from a 4-minute logon time. We had a 4-minute logon time with our old labs. Plus, we were still stuck in Windows XP, and we had some older software on there. We also wanted to minimize our hardware maintenance. As you can imagine, with a lab full of PCs, anything can go wrong. We can blow a power supply, we can blow motherboards, we can blow processors. So by doing virtualized environment, we get rid of all that and allows us to just kind of concentrate more on the users. It also gives us some greater flexibility. So it separates the apps and the separates the OS and the apps from the endpoint. And finally, also some long-term cost savings.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about our implementation strategy, how we started to go down the road towards VDI. First thing we started with was just an RFI to see, the different types of technology that were out there. Basically got pitched a lot of VMware and Citrix. So we ended up picking VMware for our kind of pilot. It was going to be a small deployment. As you can see there, we did a false start. So as we started to move into getting desktops running on these servers, we quickly realized that we didn't understand the performance footprint that our desktops had in the Gen Labs. We didn't know how much the CPU was being used, memory, disk I/O, all of the things that would cause us issues if we didn't understand them moving forward. So what we did next was we actually did an RFQ for an assessment. So anybody that's looking at doing a virtual desktop deployment, I highly recommend an assessment. There's a handful of different software vendors out there that make tools so you can assess your desktops today. The tool that we ended up with was called Stratosphere Fit by Liquidware Labs. We ran, it's basically a little agent that goes on every workstation and calls home to a server, reporting various metrics, performance metrics, as well as application use, just to see what's out there and how frequently it's being used. Another thing that comes out of the assessment is that at the end, using all those metrics, you're able to kind of put together a bill of materials and decide what you want in the way of servers, what you want in the way of disk, and the different components, just to ensure that you're not going to build something that was worse than the desktop that was there before. So as it says at the bottom here, we went through the whole process and we made purchases in the summer of 2012. Some of the pieces that we purchased alongside the hardware were some additional tools from Liquidware Labs. They make a product called Profile Unity, as well as another product called Stratosphere UX. We're currently using Profile Unity to redirect folders for the users, as well as maintain user customizations. Example would be bookmarks in IE, any kind of user customizations to toolbars inside applications that they might use. The tool actually supports a lot of commonly used software right out of the box. They're looking at the right registry entries. They're looking at all the things to maintain customizations for the users as they log into different virtual desktops. Their Word toolbars will be the same no matter where they log in. We did a pilot from December until April. We did 3 of the ITS maintained Gen Labs, and we did 1 lab in engineering, working with their IT department to get that going. One of the new things at Western that we introduced, and I won't say it's new, we did have minimal student storage. They had a small Unix home area, and I believe SFTP was the only way they could get at it, and it was not ideal. The small space, not very useful as we move forward. So we did introduce student storage as part of our VDI implementation. Each student now is going to receive 2 gigs of central storage space for their use. We did do some power consumption monitoring, and I will say that the numbers that we got back, I won't say that they were 100% accurate, but they did reflect a savings in power. We're going to look at moving forward. Obviously, we want to do that better. We want to get more granular metrics out of the power consumption to be able to identify, hopefully 100%, how much power we are saving just by moving everything into the data center. So the numbers I don't have right off the top of my head, but I do know that they weren't as accurate as we would like them to be, so that we're going to do that again moving forward and see how that goes. Using GPOs, we just popped up a survey for students as they logged in. I will say that most of the feedback was positive. You do get some negative feedback. A lot of it, I think, we could address with communication. Being that it was a pilot, it was kind of, here's a couple of labs and now they have thin clients in them. So moving forward, we're going to do more to communicate with the students what we're doing, so that they're aware of the changes that are happening. Some of them, negative thoughts towards thin clients just as a whole. They think they're getting something smaller, something worse, something less powerful than what they had in the past. When in reality, based on concurrency and the numbers that we're seeing, they're getting a lot more power than they had in the past. So established procedures, and everything changed. So before getting into server management, which is what I do now, I was in the desktop world, and there's a lot of tools, there's a lot of different things that you use to manage a desktop. When you step into the virtual space, all of those tools change. So now you're looking at different tools to make everything happen. So it's just a matter of how do you integrate that into business processes and all the things that you've standard done for years and years. So this is just a high-level Visio diagram of what we purchased and kind of how it's laid out. We ended up going with Cisco UCS chassis. 8 blades in total runs the whole infrastructure. We have 6 of those blades are dedicated to just the desktops. And then 2 of them are clustered together and they run the infrastructure components of VMware View, as well as some of the pieces. We're using 0 clients. So there's a management console. I mentioned the different pieces from Liquidware Labs. Those servers are in that cluster as well. We bought a NetApp that is dedicated to the virtual infrastructure for our desktop infrastructure. I think that's it for that slide.
Oh.
This is you.
Yeah, so now it's me again. So in our implementation, as Ryan mentioned, we decided to use Teradici-based 0 clients instead of thin clients. Essentially, a thin client has a small OS on it, a very stripped-down version of Windows, and they generally require frequent updates and an actual software client for VDI. Whereas the 0 clients, they have a firmware kind of equivalent to what a home networking router would be. So there's not really anything to update, not anything to break. 0 clients also generally have a chipset that is designed specifically for the Teradici PC over IP protocol. So PCOIP essentially compresses, encrypts, and encodes the entire computing experience at the data center and then transmits it pixels only back to the 0 clients through just a standard IP network. Uses very, very little bandwidth. And then it requires a VDI software. There's also a VDI software client, such as the Horizon View client, that allows you to have the same experience. So we needed a management console to control over 0 clients that we had deployed. And Teradici makes their own management console, which is free, which we're using to manage them all. Now, the Faculty of Engineering decided to use HP T310s, which are 0 clients for their labs, while ITS decided to go with WISE P20s and P25s. And part of this project is we took our print server that we had, that old Dell that we had kicking around, and we actually replaced it with a virtual machine. So now our entire GenLab environment is almost virtual.
I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with VMware View, kind of the way that the stack lays out, how the application servers all interact. I found this diagram to be extremely helpful. in just, you read a lot of documentation going through the implementation of VMware View. And I was having trouble putting it all together. I found this article, I found this diagram, and it really helps lay it all out. If you're looking at VMware View, I highly recommend this article. The link here is at the bottom. It's a bit lengthy, but Large Scale Designs in Google will get you to that article, and it's a great article. What I'm trying to represent here is more just network from the logical perspective. We deployed everything in separate VLANs. Down at the end here, we've got our thin client or zero client VLAN. So we actually provisioned a VLAN that's dedicated to zero clients for the Gen Labs. The next VLAN over here, I'm calling it View Components. Again, it's View connection servers. It's the Teradici management consoles. It's the different server pieces that are required to make the whole thing go. Then we have our vSphere VLAN, which is our vCenter, our ESX, just the VMware pieces. And then we also have a new VLAN that we made for our desktops. And then we've got our storage over here. We went NFS storage, and then moving away from the Unix-based student storage, we're now providing CIF storage to each of the students. This down here is just some of the supporting infrastructure that was already in the environment that you tap into to be able to make all this go. So what helped? We have existing vSphere knowledge. We have a significant size vSphere deployment doing servers, upwards of 400 virtual servers we have deployed on, I think we're up at 8 to 10 servers now. We also have our Sakai environment, which is our e-learning system, is also running on top of vSphere. So we had a good bit of experience using VMware products. Staff with experience at both the server and the desktop level was also very beneficial. It's a highly collaborative effort to get this all going. Lots of meetings with all the teams at the table. You got your network guys, you got your storage guys, you got your server guys, and your desktop guys, all sitting down to try and figure out how to make this work. And infrastructure design is critical. You want to make sure that we went fully dedicated environment. So I think that helped a lot, but you want to spend the time understanding all of this stuff before you kind of put it out in the public for use. As we mentioned, we've been working with engineering to get them into the virtual desktop space as well. We've been working to delegate all of the different pieces required to manage virtual desktops. So you're talking your vSphere infrastructure to get the desktop guys in engineering to be able to provision up their own machines, install their own software, do all of their thin client management. We've actually, the Teradici management console, each department that would be interested in getting into the virtual desktop space will get their own complete control over their zero clients using their own management console. The only thing that we currently haven't delegated would be pool creation. The reason for that being the impact it has on the environment. Until we better understand that, and are we going to get to a point where we can delegate that? I don't know, but that's where we want to go, is to be able to give full control to any of the departments on campus that would like to get into virtual desktops. Again, the assessment, I remember sitting at my desk and being quite concerned about not knowing what that server was going to do with a bunch of students sitting down in front of it and using it. So the assessment really helped clarify. I think we had a 40-page document that came out of the end of that, and it was excellent information to help build the list of materials that we needed. Again, it's highly complex infrastructure. There's a lot of different pieces if you've not looked into it before. At first, it looks quite daunting, but as you get into it, it's quite manageable once you understand all the different components and how they work together. Cost, Obviously, VDI, it's in my opinion, it's more expensive right out of the gate, but over the long term, we're hoping to get that back. Some of the challenges would be, and this would be true with any kind of virtual deployment, definition of roles and responsibilities, who does what now that the server's in the cloud or the desktops are in the cloud. So we've been working through that, and if you build a good delegation model, it's not too bad at all. I've got image rebuild process in there. The reason being is so currently we're not using any application virtualization. We've baked every application into our images. The reason being is just making the deployment happen quickly. Now that it's out there, we are looking at managing 15, 20 pools right now, and that can be quite a challenge. So now that it's out there, our next step is going to be application virtualization. Hope to knock that pool count down so that we don't have so many base images or master images to manage. So that's why image rebuild process is up there. GPU support. So it's been in a couple of the VDI presentations that I've been to here at CanHight that accelerated GPUs are a challenge in the environment. What we're seeing is to kind of get down into the weeds a little bit is just DirectX and OpenGL libraries. When we do have challenges, it's because the application requires some libraries that aren't there with the default cards or virtual graphics cards that are presented to the desktops. So we are looking at some GPU offload cards to try and enhance some of the applications that we can't run in the virtual desktop space. They don't. An example would be Siemens NX for engineering. It doesn't render the 3D image properly at all, so it's just not usable until we can get something that complements that. We have a challenge to thoroughly test applications. It's in a research-based university with a lot of different applications. I don't know how to fully test SPSS or MATLAB or Maple. So we're trying to figure out now how once we sandbox those applications, we've got to give them to somebody that can really use those applications and figure out, if the sandboxing process has caused any issues with those apps. There are unknowns. We did run into a couple that we got through. I'm going to say that they're specific to our environment, but I would imagine that anybody that's going to step into the virtual desktop space is going to run into some totally unknowns. Today, we haven't gone with any kind of deep security suites. We are still using just an agent-based antivirus inside the virtual machine. We are using Trend. So there's a tool that they offer that does a pre-scan. And what that mitigates is full file system scan inside the link clones once they're up and running. So it kind of tells the Trend client that it's scanned that stuff. It doesn't need to. Because we've done linked clones, you don't need to scan it again. So it kind of mitigates the full client situation inside a virtual desktop. But moving forward, I would imagine we're going to look at that again in the future. But right now, it is working fine for us using that pre-scan piece from Trend. So after the pilot, we rolled out most of the remaining ITS labs. I was just talking with my colleagues. We're going to do the few that remain when we get back from CanHight. So right now we're upwards of 300, 350 virtual desktops deployed inside those 6 blades. Concurrency is currently low, so we're not seeing huge utilization of those blades, but we're ramping up for September to make sure that everything's going to stay standing when all the students show up. We are expanding the server infrastructure. I've got a handful more blades to configure and build up another cluster. We deployed View 5.1, and that's what's running today. The new cluster, I'm going to build up 5.2 and kind of migrate pools over and then upgrade the other side that is currently running 5.1. We are investigating Cisco Nexus distributed virtual switch. My network guys really want to see inside our hosts. Currently, we just run vSwitches. We've never stepped into the distributed virtual switch inside VMware. So instead of going with just the standard DVS, we are looking at going with the Nexus and getting the network stuff over to the network guys so that they can fully manage that. As I mentioned, we're looking at GPU enhancements as well as ThinApp. Rob mentioned our secure global desktop product. We're looking at getting rid of that product, and we're actually looking at a terminal server pool, which is one of the pools that you can configure inside VMware View. And the reason being would be Microsoft licensing again at the desktop level. We would love to expose desktops for the students to be able to remotely access. We do have, an established terminal server solution. So I think what we're going to do is just remove the Oracle piece and move those terminal servers behind VMware View and get everybody to access it that way until we can hopefully come up with some sort of solution to get them to the same desktop that they use when they're in the Gen Labs. So what's next? We are focused on labs for now. We're sticking to linked clones for now as well. We haven't stepped into kind of dedicated virtual machines or anything like that. We are working with other units on campus as well. As I mentioned, we're working with engineering, but we've also started working with our registrar's office, and we have the Schulich School of Medicine and Dentistry at Western as well is piloting the use of virtual desktops. So once the desktops were out there, people saw them and they wanted to know how they could get in and try to use our infrastructure to test this stuff and see how they felt about it. So we're working right now to try and, again, delegate this stuff to each department that would like to try it, and then hopefully we can expand it and move forward from there. So was it worth it? Financially, that's to be determined. Long term, I'm thinking we're going to get there. We are kind of looking at a cost recovery model to get people into this service. Being the technical guys, they just took all my tools away that I used to use, and now I've got new tools, and they're awesome. So much control and so much power over the virtual desktops in that environment. As we delegate these things out, and I have our different faculty IT people are working on their virtual machine, and they get it ready and send us a note to get a pool created. Back and forth. It's super fast provisioning of machines. And I hope to make that even better as we start to pull the applications out of the machines. I want to see one big pool with AD entitlements getting you access to the applications that you require as a student. So I think that's where we're going next. Again, flexibility, central infrastructure, delegation, consistency of desktop images, and collaboration. You learn a lot when you go out and you talk to all your separate faculties and you're like, what are you doing? What are you doing? There's a lot to learn out there. Everybody's doing something different. So I found that to be a great benefit of implementing VDI, was just to get out and talk to all the other lab administrators out there to see how they were doing it and how they'd like to do it moving forward. So that's kind of where we are. It's our virtual desktop implementation at Western. Are there any questions?
I have a question. Very interesting. How are you handling external media, USB drives?
So the question was external medium, USB drives. The Zero clients themselves, which are a small device, they have USB ports front and back, and the multimedia redirection of VMware View has been seamless so far. We haven't had any problems. USB keys, I believe you had a smart board running.
Yeah, we had a smart podium running on it. We've also we plugged in our scanners to these.
As long as the driver is on the Windows machine for the device that you're going to plug in, USB keys, no problem. But the smart board, I think they had to provision up the drivers and the application software to be there. But then when you plug in the USB, the redirection just passes it right to the virtual machine that's inside the data center, and no problems so far.
Let me rephrase the question.
Okay.
I wanted that one also. The questions around data, like are you allowed, like with the VDI model, you've got your data centralized.
Yes.
How are you handling the possibility of data leaving the campus?
Well, and it's any of the data is going to be student data, right? And they've always used the GenLab environment.
Right.
Now that they have student storage, currently that student storage is not remotely accessible. We are looking at how to make that remotely accessible. Right now, when a student logs into a desktop, their folders are redirected to that storage. So when they place stuff on the desktop, it all moves up to that storage. Moving forward, we would like to have the students to be able to access that. But I don't know if there's data that, it's student data. They've always had their their control over it, and they still have control over it. So I don't know if that answers your question.
One change at a time, just
Yes,
little
yes.
changes possible.
Yes, and we have, I mentioned the survey. We did have students say, I have 2 gigs of storage now and I can only get at it from these labs. When can I get at it from elsewhere? So that's a hot topic for us, is to try and provision up some way to remotely allow them to upload, download whatever they want and then access it from that desktop when they're on campus. And then even I'm going to map that drive space when I move my terminal servers behind VMware View as well. That was one of the big downfalls of our previous remote application system was, a file had to traverse the internet to be able to interact with the application on the terminal server. So now that we have disk in the same data center as the terminal servers, you're going to get more uptake, I think, of our remote solution.
So last question for me would be the login time went from 4 minutes to what now?
30 to 45 seconds.
Yeah, 30 seconds.
4 minutes is.
And that's,
easy.
it was because of our antivirus scanner. Every time we logged in, the antivirus would go into a scan of the entire profile and the entire system. Now, because we have Profile Unity running, all the systems are doing is going up to the NetApp and pulling down their profile.
I think GPOs had a small thing in there as well. We did do a lot of work to review the GPOs before we just put them on the virtual desktops as well. So there was a little bit of GPO consolidation as well to kind of speed that up.
They just need to know
That is quicker, and that was definitely in the survey as well. Is that logon times were significantly quicker, and that was a big, a lot of students were commenting on that.
How about delivering to BYOD or student devices?
And it all comes back to the Microsoft license, right? Currently, the way we've built the virtual desktop infrastructure, the 0 clients are the only things that hit those desktops. It's the only way that you're getting a PCO-IP session to the virtual desktop. I do see us exposing our terminal server solution to anything that can make that connection. The VMware View client, as I'm sure you're aware, is available on almost everything, right? You got your iPads, your Androids, your desktops, your Linux, Mac OS X. So that right there plugs a bunch of gaps we had in our Oracle Secure Global Desktop model, being that was a Java-based client delivery, as well as you could install a client to get into that as well, but it was a Windows client and that was it. So moving our terminal servers behind that is going to put us in a better position for BYOD.
How do you delegate the control of master image to each department's, department's spokesperson? Do you do that, or?
Yes, yep, and basically just using Active Directory, and I'll repeat the question, is just wondering how we delegate virtual machine control to our different faculties. So just using folder structures inside vSphere, as well as Active Directory group memberships. VMware View does quite a bit with the folder structure inside vSphere. When you go and create a pool in VMware View, it's created a folder for that pool, and everything's nicely lined up. So we just went through, created groups for the different system administrators in the different faculties, and allowed them access into our vSphere environment to be able to provision up their machines. And then they let us know, and we create pools for
So
them.
they go through vCenter too.
Yes, yes, and it's either, some of them use the FAT client. We've got the web client as well, so we have options for them to get in. From all the feedback I've heard, they're making it well. Eric, it's working well.
Working well. Faculty staff plans?
Well, and so the Gen Labs, they are
Yeah.
open to faculty and
No,
staff.
I mean like replacing their office desktop, or at least giving the option to replace,
Yes.
or,
So,
I mean, I guess it's basically BYOD, but for staff and faculty,
yep,
where you kind of eliminate that Microsoft problem.
because you could, buy the license for them directly, right? So my desktop is a little bit messy, and I'm looking at rebuilding it. So I've provisioned myself up a persistent machine inside a dev environment, and that's as far as we've gone with any kind of looking at the persistent model or the persistent disk model, or however we want to build those desktops. We haven't gone too far down that road besides just tinkering to kind of feel it out.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.